Becoming your own boss is freedom like you've never known, but it can easily take over your life.
You know, you can be talented at many different things, but not be fulfilled.
That's why the best leaders have an action plan to keep balance in check, from small mindset changes to developing a yoga or meditation practice. Now, you coach top-level executives and team leaders. How did you come to work in this field?
It's because I just really felt that too much talent was going to waste. People who've reached the top and are thinking, now what? What do I do? I've reached the top of the ladder and there's no more rungs to go.
Tracy Forsyth is a leadership coach and founder of Fast Track to Fearless. She helps people in high power positions navigate their work-life balance.
Pause, process, and then proceed. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take yourself out of whatever you're in. Not even a Formula One car can go at 200 miles around the bends without those pit stops.
What advice would you give to women or parents who are struggling with parenting responsibilities around full-time work?
I'm speaking as a woman and I work a lot with women, but they give everything.
Hello and welcome to The Switch from St James's Place Financial Advisor Academy. I'm Gee Foottit. If you're ready for a better, more fulfilling career, this is your go-to resource to start that journey. Tracy, a very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, can you be your own boss and have balance in your life?
You can be your own boss and have balance in your life, but it takes intention, and it takes really being mindful of what balance looks like. It doesn't just happen on its own.
I guess it would be different for every person.
It depends where you get your energy from. And a lot of people who have their own business love their own business. So they could work till the cows come home and be absolutely fine. I think it's the difference between when you start up a business. Often when you start up a business, it's like all hands on deck. It takes a lot of energy to get something off the ground. And I think that's probably the danger area where balance sometimes goes out of the window when you're really, really trying to launch something.
So when pivoting careers, is relentless hustle and sacrificing well-being really necessary?
I don't think so. Again, pivoting career, a lot of it can happen before you actually pivot career. If you really think about what you're doing and why you're doing it and what sparks joy for you and what sparks that what energizes you. And if you have a bit of a vision and a strategy and all of that kind of thing, and you're realistic about the timelines, then I don't think you do have to sacrifice your well-being. But I do think you have to be very, very conscious about what is good well-being for you. You know, is it, for me, I know it's like always having time to walk up my dogs. It's having coffee with my mum. It's doing a bit of exercise. It's having that downtime as well. It's not just it's very easy, I think, if you are pivoting or setting up your own business to be at the computer from dawn till dusk and not want to take a break. But that is counterproductive in the end. So I think it's really being mindful of both things, what you're doing, what the vision is, including a well-rounded vision of well-being.
That's really important to think about, and thinking about things from not just well-being, a fulfilment piece as well. So many people are working extremely hard, but maybe not necessarily feeling fulfilled. So do you need to have a complete career overhaul to find that fulfillment, or could it just be a mindset shift?
I think it's really more of a mindset shift. So for me, I have like a formula, which is to a fulfilled life and career. And that is doing the things that energize you, that really like you know, that kind of thing, the things that you do when time flies, when you forget you're hungry, you forget to eat, you know, that things that are energizing. So that's passion really. What are you passionate about actually doing in your day? The second thing I think is purpose. Like, with those actions, what impact do you like to have? What is a meaningful use of your time? So passion and purpose. And then I think if you need to make money, you know, if it's a career, then you need to combine those two things, passion and purpose, into problem solving. What problem does it solve for which you are going to get paid? So passion, purpose, problem solving. And then if you can live in alignment with your values, if you understand your values and know what they are, then I think it doesn't really get much better than that.
Really great advice. Now, people may not have spent time thinking about what their values really are, but I highly recommend having a go and doing some exercises. Now, you coach top-level executives and team leaders. How did you come to work in this field?
Well, I was a top-level executive and a team leader. I worked for many years in the creative industry. So I worked in the television industry, both making programs, commissioning programs, and then part of the global leadership team at the BBC. And I suppose when I first had my own big team, I realized that I was very passionate about developing people. Why? Because I was asked to mentor younger people than myself, and I had this team to look after. And I found that people were coming to me with problems where they were very talented and hardworking and ambitious people, but they had a lot of self-doubt, or they lacked self-belief, or they had kind of obstacles that to them seemed insurmountable, but that I had been through before and kind of found a way. And so it really kind of frustrated me that talented, hardworking people had this self-doubt or lack of self-belief, when I thought, actually, you're amazing. So I found that I was really drawn to either building confidence in people and really showing them, reflecting back at them who they were and the amazing abilities that they had. And I found that I was able to help them with removing obstacles, like how to network, how to land key messages, how to kind of approach difficult conversations. And so I kind of felt that why I made my own switch, why I pivoted to becoming a full-time coach and facilitator and trainer, et cetera, is because I just really felt that too much talent was going to waste. Too much talent was going to waste. And we don't live in a meritocracy. Yeah. We don't live in a world where the best people always get the jobs. Often it is about positioning. Often it is about instilling confidence in other people. And so for me, I just thought I got to a point in my life where I thought I don't really want to be in senior management anymore. I'd had a brilliant career as a creative, and I felt a calling to put my experience and expertise into helping other people break through, remove that self-doubt, create that self-belief, and go forth and deliver their talent to the world and their value. So that's why I kind of called my company Fast Track to Fearless, because fearless is how I want these talented, hardworking individuals to feel about who they are, what they stand for, what they want in the world. And the fast track bit is really about passing on tools and techniques, like how to network like a ninja, how to create an elevator pitch, how to persuade and influence. The fast track bit is really about getting them to that state faster.
Fantastic. And I love the company and the brand name, and your website looks fantastic. So I highly recommend people go and check you out. So you mentioned talent a lot there. What is more important to you then, talent or courage? Some people may feel like they don't have the skills to switch career, but is the courage to make the change the most important thing?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I never thought I would end up doing what I'm doing now. I never thought I would pivot career, but I honestly couldn't be happier and more fulfilled. So I think talent, you can be talented at many different things, but not be fulfilled. Being a senior leader, for me, I could do it. And I think my team liked me and all that kind of thing. And I was known as a strong female, leader and all of that kind of thing. But it didn't really energize me. It didn't really, it didn't really excite me in the way that what I do now excites me. So I think it's it is definitely having the courage of your convictions. But I think what really helps is really doing some work around what are those two things? What is it? What is my passion? What do I really enjoy doing? And the second thing is, what do you want to put that towards? So for, purpose, what is meaningful impact for you? When you look and think, what are the things you're proudest of in this world? What is time well spent? How do you want to be remembered? Then what is that? So for me, I know that I had a wonderful career in television. I had a really super interesting time, went around the world, did loads of amazing things. But I think I would want to be remembered for the work, if I'm remembered at all. I want to be remembered for the work that I'm doing now, which is really helping people to be who they truly are and believe in themselves, and then being able to release that value in the world to do good. So I think, so courage, yes, you do need the courage to actually just do it. Yeah. But I think it really helps if you understand why. And the reason why that understanding your passion and purpose is so important is because when you are full of doubt, that's the thing that you return to. And that's the reason why you're doing it. So it's very hard to pivot if you're not really interested in what you're pivoting to.
We have a saying in our academy, BBQ, be brave quicker. just a mindset shift for people to give something a go and learn from that imperfect action.
Yes,
So
absolutely. I mean, that's life, isn't it? I always think failure is development in disguise. There was a brilliant quote the other day. It's like, oh, if you don't want to be criticized, don't do anything. So I think the people that I help with their pivots, because I do a whole thing called Fast Track to Fearless Career Pivot. They seem to come in three categories. It's either people who've reached the top and are thinking, now what? What do I do? I've reached the top of the ladder and there's no more rungs to go. So how do I find meaning in my life, and how do I still do stuff? The second thing is people who are in a job but feeling unfulfilled. And I think there's lots of I heard a brilliant quote, which is like, I've got the skill, but not the will. So people just in jobs that they're not really excited by. And the third thing is that people who are in industries that are rapidly changing and their roles are being made redundant. Now, that's going to happen to all of us in one sense or the other with technology changing. So, I think for all of us, we need to be very nimble and bouncy in a way. The World Economic Forum back in 2023 said that we're not just going to have one career, we'll have many. And it's our core skills that count, our core skills. But how many people can really articulate what their core skills are separate to what their job title is?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, their self-esteem and everything they do is wrapped up in their current job title. But I think what's more valuable is getting underneath the bonnet and thinking, what problems am I solving? What value am I creating? And what are my core skills and then think about how can they be applied elsewhere?
Now, I love your brand, Fast Track to Fearless. Has fear ever held you back?
Yeah, of course. I do have, I have had self-doubt. Certainly going from a very well-paid corporate role to effectively starting again at the age of 49. I was 49 when I pivoted. And, we've got big mortgage, 2 kids, et cetera. So the fear was more about, am I going to make the amount of money that I need to in order to maintain, family life? So that was definitely there. But I think in a way, fear is a great motivator as well. It meant that I did not hang around. I had to do something. And in a way, that gave me the courage to, that gave me the boost to get on with it. If I didn't have to worry about money, would I have achieved what I have achieved? Probably not. But the quote I love all these quotes that people come up with. But the other quote I love, I think it's by a psychologist called Nicholas Wignall. And he said, confidence is not the absence of fear. It's the knowledge that you will be okay despite your fear. And I think it's that, isn't it? It's like, I think we're very, very capable people generally. We're resourceful, creative. Like if the worst case happens, then we normally are able to scrape ourselves up off the floor and start again. So I think, when you have that fear, it's just to look back and think, how many problems have you solved in the past? How many holes have you been in that you've actually got yourself out of? And it's just remembering that we don't remember our achievements very well. We only focus on, and I think it's probably because we're hardwired to worry about our survival. So, but I think if we've done something before, we often just dismiss it or forget about it. So I think just in times of those fear, it's good to kind of look back and think, what have you done before? What mountains have you climbed and achieved? And certainly my inner critic when I was changing careers was like, you're not going to make, who do you think you are? You're not going to make the money that you need. Yeah. And then, but I think you have to think about that fear and think, is it worth me listening to that fear? Is there a valid fear there? What can I do to mitigate that fear? What can I do to make that fear go away?
On that financial side, what were the things that you did to help you be able to take this step?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So the things that I did on a practical level was really for the first time ever do a proper family budget. So Martin, what's his name? Martin Lewis, money saving expert. He is like I think he's amazing. So he had a proper Excel spreadsheet, family budget, et cetera, et cetera. So I went through it line by line and worked out what we needed at a minimum to get by. And that really made me we were kind of a family that just spent what we earned and, didn't really, had credit cards and all of that kind of thing. So I got rid of all of those. I just got a lot more on top of the family budget. But also doing that exercise made me realize what I needed to earn and what I needed to charge. So when I started again, I do things like one-to-one executive coaching. I design and host leadership programs and career confidence programs and all of that. So often working with corporate companies and private individuals. And that, with some market research, really gave me an idea of what my prices should be, because I had to hit numbers.
Absolutely. Now, there are some common threads between people who run their own business and people in high-powered positions that challenge their well-being day to day. What are those threads?
People who run their own businesses tend to be self-starters, don't they? They are driven. They often, if it's your own business, you often don't have anybody else to rely on to take up the slack. And so you kind of think, well, if I don't do it, nobody else will. Yeah. So it can become quite a, not an ivory tower, but it can be all on your shoulders. And I think that is why it's very, very difficult. It can be very difficult if you're very focused on making something happen to build in those buffers. I know that I certainly, I really skirted very closely to burnout when I was starting my business, or a couple of years in. But, and so I had to be, my husband used to say, you're working too hard. And I'd be going, yeah, but I've got to. And whether I would, with hindsight, go back and do anything about it, or could tell myself back then what to do about it, I probably would have said, right, you need an hour and a half to walk the dogs every day. You need to create buffers, which is what I do now. I create big buffers in my diary, by which I mean, I look through my diary in the weeks to come and really block out sections with a name, so that it's not just email time that gets hoovered up. It's actually leaving the desk and going out. And I think having dogs does definitely help with that, because they've got to be walked every day. And so you've got to leave your desk and go and do that. But I think it's about really taking that seriously. Highly driven people who run their own businesses, they're a little bit like Formula One cars, that they drive and navigate bends at very fast speeds, and they will often run on empty. And but not even a Formula One car can go at 200 miles an hour around the bends without those pit stops. And so I think really what I encourage high level execs and myself to do is treat yourself like a Formula One car, which means that you've got to put the maintenance in. You've got to put the self-maintenance in. You've got to have those refueling moments, whatever that fuel is. You've got to have change the oil, change the tires. You can only really work at that level if you are serious about your self-maintenance. And I don't call it self-care anymore, because self-care is like, I don't know, it doesn't seem to be as serious as I think it is, a word, self-care, in the olden days that used to be having a massage or etc. And it's not that. It's self-maintenance. It's making sure that it's like, if you had a racehorse, you wouldn't feed a racehorse McDonald's and keep it in its stable every day. It would have to have the right conditions, the right diet, the right food. And so I don't think we're any different, really. So it's really about, I often advocate that, when I do leadership programs at big companies, that as well as their business objectives, they should have a wellbeing objectives that they talk through with their managers. And the managers should be able to share theirs as well.
Absolutely. And should you have that wellbeing objective written down for yourself?
I think so, yeah.
And what might that look like?
For me, that would look like, so I think you think about, well, what would an ideal week or month look like? And so for me, it would be, walk the dogs every day, for at least an hour. It might be see my mum for coffee on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning. It might be I've started weightlifting. So one weightlifting session a week. It might be do a yoga session, and it might be something else, do a dance session. But it would also be putting in chats with girlfriends. It would be also including sit down and watch television, crime dramas. I love crime dramas, whatever it is to you. So I think it's what would be your perfect week, and things happen and put them in. So I'm a big fan of like putting them in and letting everything else work around it. Now, in real life, often that doesn't always happen, but you try to get as close to that as possible. And if one week it's really, really bonkers, then you think, okay, well, the next week I'll try and get that back in. This is what I think, it's like a practice, isn't it? It's a practice. But I think it's understanding what your energizers and your buffers are in the first place. I think the whole ancient philosophers got it right. To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. Understand yourself, understand yourself and your factory settings and the way you operate best.
Now, you mentioned when you did your career change to start your business, those first couple of years you were working really hard. And I feel like people, before they've made the switch, look to the other side of the fence, dream of that autonomy. They're in control of their time. And actually, it can have the opposite effect. They don't create more time. That comes with time. But in the early stages, you're probably wearing lots of different hats in your business and you're thinking about it all the time as well. So to help people avoid work taking over their life, how early should they be thinking about bringing in assistants, for example?
I mean, these days, with AI, there are so many labor-saving devices now. And also I do have an assistant now, a virtual business manager, who helps me with socials and scheduling and assets and marketing assets and all of that kind of thing. So no man is an island. I think what can be hard when you're setting up on your own is it can be lonely. So whether that's you join a cohort of like-minded people who are doing the same thing to share problems with and discuss it, because oftentimes when you're setting something up, you lack the kind of camaraderie of a team that you might have had to talk to. And, your spouse, if you have one, might not be the best person, to do that with. So I think it's partly about, I even though I have my own business, I think I just worked with lots of different people at the time. So, I worked with like a social media expert or somebody who helped me with my branding. And I think it's really useful because setting up a business, it's not just your core function of what you do. A lot of it is about positioning and getting, raising awareness that you're doing it to ensure a pipeline of customers in. So actually, when I became, when I did my coaching qualifications, et cetera, but that was not going to be enough. The world has to know who you are and who you help and all of that kind of thing. So one part of my work was, well, apart from one-to-one clients, which is very bespoke, what are the courses and the offering? Fast Track to Fearless Career Confidence course. What is that? Fast Track to Fearless Modern Leadership. What is that? All the different the days and what is the kind of IP or what am I offering? What's my offering? But then the second thing is that I think you do need a bit of help on is how to position yourself in the market and how to get those assets out there. What is your sales? How do people know what you offer and how it makes their life easier? So I always think there's a really brilliant book by Donald Miller called Marketing Made Simple. And he really teaches you how to look at what you do from a customer's perspective. Because when a customer wants something, they're not really looking at you yourself. They're just looking at what problem can you solve. So it takes me back to my 3 P's of pivoting are passion. What's the thing that you want to be doing most of the time? Purpose. What is the impact that you find meaningful? And how do you put those 2 things together to problem solve for other people? And then, once you've got that, then you need to find people with that problem. And then Marketing Made Simple, he does this brilliant, he talks about this thing called the grunt test, the grunt test. And that is a test where you've got to imagine you're selling your services or selling your product to a caveman who can only grunt in agreement. And it's 3 things that caveman's got to understand very simply is like, what are you offering him? Okay. The second thing is, how does it make his life better? And then the third thing is, what does he have to do to get it? That's what websites really should do. Most people, when they're starting their business, they're thinking, I've got to tell them all about me. I've got to tell them about me and my credentials, et cetera, et cetera. People aren't interested. Next time you go, if you were looking for a financial advisor, you might look up financial advisor, but what you're really attracted to is I need somebody that's going to help my mortgage, or I need somebody who's going to sort out my pensions for me.
I love that. Really just focus on the customer with the customer in mind. What outcome do you want for that person?
Yeah.
And keep that in front of mind.
Yeah.
Now, you founded Yoga in the Boardroom.
Yes.
When we're talking about well-being, are there any specific routines that people can adopt, such as meditation or yoga, that can help? And how would you recommend that they implement it?
Yeah. So Yoga in the Boardroom came about because whilst I was in my big corporate job, I was really into yoga. and I was quite achievement focused. So for me back then, I wanted to be good at yoga, which in my mind back then was being able to do really fancy arm balances and handstands and, all the difficult stuff. So I thought, well, how am I going to get good at yoga? And then I thought, okay, well, the closest thing I could find was to do a yoga teacher training course. So I did that in the weekend, so over a year. And very quickly I learned on that. It's a 200-hour yoga teacher training course. I very quickly learned on that. On the day one, they get out the Yoga Sutras, which is like the yoga Bible written by Patanjali. And it says, a famous quote, yoga is the cessation of the mind stuff. Yoga is the cessation of the mind stuff. So basically, yoga is nothing about the fancy arm balances. It's really about stopping what they call the vrittis, the worries in your mind. And yoga means to yoke. And what is it yoking? It's yoking the mental, the physical, and the spiritual in. And the whole aim of yoga is to reach this samadhi, this kind of like this peace, this bliss, this union of body, mind, and spirit. So I very quickly thought, oh, okay, so actually achievement is, and often they say that the postures, all of that kind of stuff is the gateway drug into yoga. So the whole point of yoga is not being able to do difficult poses, but it's to find this balance, this peace. So then, over the year, because I was doing this course and having my job at the same time, I realized that I was bringing many techniques from the mat into the workplace. So, for example, if I was stressed, then I would start using my yogic breathing to calm down and to get more oxygen into my system. And actually that yogic breath, that oceanic breath, it's called Ujjayi breath, is scientifically proven to lower the blood pressure and calm the nervous system, kick in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. So I found that if I had to go in and present a big board case and I was feeling a case to the board and was feeling nervous, that I would do that whilst I was waiting to go in. But also in terms of like being at our desks and on our phones all the time, I found that I was bringing in stretches like eagle arms and, cat cow, etc., and adapting them to the desk. So both in a physical sense, breathing, posture, but also in terms of mindset, yoga. Then if you look at all the philosophy, it's very much about the central tenets of being kind to yourself, speaking your truth, non-attachment, using your energy in the right way. All of these things that I found, well, actually, those are really good ways to approach life and leadership. So Yoga in the Boardroom was born. I kind of just put together like a workshop, which I still go out and do within companies, which is teaching people how to bring those yogic techniques into the workplace without having to be in your lycra leggings and on a mat. It's like, so it's all about energy and all. Anyway, so really practical stuff. So that's what I think. I think it's really about not letting it be. It's not like work and life. It's not binary. It's about you are a whole living, breathing organism. It's about weaving it into everything that you do. So it might be, on the way to work, from the tube to your workplace of work. It's like, every 4 steps, you count your breath in and out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, so you slow your breath down, you deepen your breath, you kick in that parasympathetic nervous system. So that, it's like when you're at your desk, it's doing certain stretches to make sure you don't, hunch over and get tech neck, because we're all going that way, aren't we? But it's also in your dealings with people. It's like, actually, are you speaking your truth? Is it difficult to do? Are you holding stuff in that actually you don't want to hold in? Are you using your energy in the right way at work? And that has many implications. It's like, is the purpose of the business clear? Is your strategy clear? Is the team, how do you work within the team? What are your value system within the team? So I think it's a holistic thing. It's but living consciously. And I never really used to understand what that meant until I kind of thought, actually, it's like living on purpose. It's living on purpose rather than just having it all happen to you.
Now, something that you actually, before we started recording, we were talking about our children. We're both parents. So what advice would you give to women or parents who are struggling with parenting responsibilities around full-time work?
Yeah, that is so hard. I mean, like my youngest, one's off at university, the second one is just finishing his A levels, and I just suddenly realised, wow, that has been, and I've got a great husband, etc., etc., and we're a team. But I realised that's 20 years of holding space as a working mother, and frankly, I'm a bit depleted, and I'm looking forward to the next chapter. But I think it's like, it's one of those things that when you're in it, it is your, I don't know whether something biological kicks in and that's your need to make sure that your family survive, etc., etc. But women, I don't know, I'm speaking as a woman and I work a lot with women, but they give everything of themselves. How many times do we, I just always remember busting for a pee, but actually making sure the kids came in, were, that they're out of the car and fed and watered before I'd go to the loo, And I think it's really, really hard when you've got kids to create that space for you. And especially it becomes harder because, I don't know whether women feel guilty about it. But I just go back to maintaining yourself for the long haul is that you've got to have those buffers in it if you're going to survive it. It's one of those things as a woman, I think you don't realize until you're sort of out of it, how much out of that stretch, how much actually went into it. All the mental load, all those forms from school, all that, the feeding. Like when my daughter comes home, she says, "What's for dinner, mummy?" I'm like, "Oh God, not again." But that's only after 20 years of doing it. So I think it's like accept all the help you can get, ask for help. One of the books that I read probably around that time was called The Happiness Project. The Happiness Project. It's a really fantastic book. And she just said that, and this is really for women just need to be very specific about what they need doing. And I know it's not fair that, and I'm overgeneralizing here really, but so I'm not saying this is every family, whatever. But instead of like being resentful that the bins aren't taken out, just say, can you take the bins out? I know it's something simple like that. I suppose it's like women have got to be, or women in particular, parent-wise, have got to be aware of what is their energy going in, where are they getting that from, because a lot of it is going out on everything. And they often put themselves at the bottom of the list. And it's whether, I don't know, whether you can put those buffers in, be clearer about the help you need, or how a household should function. And I think this is very cultural, isn't it? Because I see TikToks all the time of like different cultures, and it's not always that way.
What's one small habit or mindset shift that can start making a big difference today for someone who might be feeling overwhelmed?
I think it's like to pause, process, and then proceed. If you're feeling overwhelmed, pause and take yourself out of whatever you're in. So whether that is going out to sit on a bench, ideally in nature or something, or whether it's going out for a walk away from what you're in. And then the second step is while you're doing that, you could try breathing, slowing down your breath, deepening your breath, but also it's to process what is really going on, by which I mean let those feelings or those worries surface and have a look at them, like name them, like name the emotions that you're feeling. Because I think like those emotions and thoughts, they're like one end of a tangled ball of string. And if you spend time processing them and trying to unraveling, like just name it, like I am feeling disgruntled, or I am feeling overwhelmed. And then you just spend a bit of time thinking, well, what's at the other end of that string? What is going on? Process and do some investigation, because I think, we often try to power through our overwhelm or power through our emotions or just try to suppress them, but it doesn't really work because they keep coming back up. So I think the best thing you could do is like pause and, show yourself some respect and honor yourself as you would a friend who was like feeling in need. Yeah. Then my third one is like proceed. Once you know what you need or what the forward action is, then you can proceed. But often you have to spend quite a bit of time in process what is going on. And whether that is you need to talk to a friend or whether you need to have some perspective on it or whatever. But I think it's just listen to yourself, because when we're overwhelmed, it is our body telling us something.
I've heard, I can't remember who it was on a podcast saying to go up high. I think it's Daniel Priestley, actually. So go somewhere up high or like you just said, remove yourself from your normal environment. And one of our directors here has a picture on the wall of the Earth rising. It was a photo taken from the moon. And it just reminds him in those moments to step back and look at it from a different perspective. Yeah. And I thought that was quite clever.
Yeah. I think that's true. It's like the cloud, the cloud, the silver lining in the cloud. Or I always think that on a grey day, if you remember, when you go on an aeroplane, you often go through the clouds and the sun is shining. So I often think, actually, it may be a grey day, but up there the sun is shining. Yeah. So perspective is a wonderful thing. Absolutely. And often it's very difficult to do if you're in that state of overwhelm.
Now, talking of career transition, something that you work with many people on, some people believe in the just quit mentality. And others think you should really work on your side hustle in the background before you make the move. So where do you stand?
I think start thinking about it. I think it's quite like unless you've got very deep pockets and, you can spend time after you just quit to do it. But I think you should start thinking about it. And I think, everybody needs a side hustle. We're not going to have one career. We're going to have many. And the way the world is going, I don't think anybody can be certain about, their future career. So I think the more you can think about what are my core skills, what are my real loves, what's my passion and my purpose, and how then does that manifest in different problem solving ways for which I get paid, the better. And I think, I think it's quite hard just to pivot just on make a U-turn or a sideways turn just like that. For all of those reasons. So I think, people should be thinking about it now. What would I do? I think it's just good practice. Like, what would I do if, I don't know, my department suddenly went? Who are the 2 or 3 people that I would go and speak to? But also, what would I do if my whole industry gets taken over by AI? What would I do? How do I create value? What do I like to do? What kind of impact do I like to have? What is the proof of that? So I think it's never too early for that. In fact, I think people should be doing that kind of now, yesterday.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned earlier that you personally changed career at 49. I get asked this question a lot. Is it ever too late to change careers?
I don't think so. No. In fact, I'm already thinking about, well, what will I do after this? So one of the things that I'm learning is British Sign Language, because one of my friends is deaf and I'm just at level 2 and there's 6 levels. But I kind of think, maybe in my 3rd career, I'll be an interpreter, and I love true crime. So maybe I'll be like somebody who goes and helps out in police stations and all of that kind of thing. So no, I think as long as you are solving a problem, a real world problem, then you'll always be. Why not?
Absolutely. And my dad is 80, still working, loves what he does.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is, as you say, it's the passion piece. If you enjoy what you do, it doesn't feel like work.
Yes.
So finally, what is the best piece of invaluable advice that you've been given from someone else that you'd like to pass on?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So there's a fantastic quote by Andre Leon Talley, who is this larger-than-life editor-in-chief at Vogue. I mean, it was like an amazing cultural influencer. And he said, I scorched the earth with my talent and I let my light shine. So I think that piece of advice would be scorch the earth with your talent and let your light shine.
Brilliant advice. Tracy, thank you so much for coming. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on The Switch.
You're very welcome. Lovely to be here, and thank you very much.
A big thanks to Tracy for joining us on the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode of The Switch, make sure to follow, rate and share it with somebody who's ready for a career change. And if you're on your own journey, hit subscribe. We've got plenty more inspiration and insight coming your way. I'm Gee Foottit, and you've been listening to The Switch from St James's Place Financial Advisor Academy.